As Ben said, I'm Tom, Senior Data Analyst at StatsPerform. And yeah, in the past couple of weeks, kind of been having conversations and spoken with Alex Thomas at the FA who's here today, and Alex Scott as well, who's kind of the lead women's analyst, and kind of talking about some themes that they're kind of interested in, looking deeper into in the game, using data to get these kind of insights out. And one of the areas we kind of spoke about was goal kicks and what the rule of kind of the new inbox short goal kick rule has on various aspects of the game. So although the title says it's kind of impacting men's and women's games, we actually have a tiny sample of data with the women's games, and we've only actually got one competition where those changes actually have taken place. So that's the FAWSL. We've only got kind of 2 seasons of data to look at there. So this is actually focusing more on the men's game. One solid conclusion I can give you though, which actually is probably something people could apply with next year, is that the difference in goal kick length between men's and women's games is surprisingly different. Women can not kick it as far as men, the pitch is the same size. So I think that for someone next year, that's a really interesting area to look at in terms of how does that make an impact in the shape and various things from there. So what I want to do here, this is always going to kind of focus on top 5 European leagues, 2018, 19 and 19, 20. And this with kind of like any analysis, I've kind of gone down the rabbit hole a little bit of like, all right, what is a goal kick for a start? Do they matter? Why do they matter? What do teams do with them? How has that changed? And then look about kind of like chance creation and chance prevention from goal kick situations, ball progression, and some takeaways as well. So why do goal kicks matter? To a lot of fans, they probably don't. It's just the situation, what happens when your side miss the ball and you have to watch the goalkeeper send the ball aimlessly upfield. But similar to kind of like Johnny's talk for David earlier, a goal kick again is kind of an uninterrupted attempt to restart possession. You have time to set up, you could rehearse and play out kind of a choreographed sequence, and you can also therefore practice these set plays. On the flip side though, you couldn't get any further away from the opposition goal unless you somehow parked yourself in your own corner. Your opponent has got time to set up as well, and also it's high risk if you turn the ball over close to your goal. There is another pro though, and that's the fact that the "your shit are" chant goes down really well. But the flip side of that is, goalkeepers have feelings and those can get hurt in these situations too. So now we're all on board of, while that matters. So we can see that goal kicks are actually the third most common set piece that we have in a game. So 16.2 on average in the top 5 European leagues, 18, 19 to 19, 20. So roughly 8 a side. And you can see that throw-ins are actually really, really prevalent, really common, and maybe it's a good idea to kind of coach those. And I was going to make some sort of gag about having a goal kick coach, but I'm sure that this guy would be really annoyed at me if I made any sort of comment like that. What I do find quite interesting though is that penalties occur kind of like 1 every 3 games. Direct free kicks, there's usually 1 a game. Anyone who's practicing kickoffs, I'm be very intrigued by. But there's some sequences here where teams will dedicate training time to those situations that actually happen far less than ones like goal kicks or throw-ins. So what do teams do with them? So teams can choose to do one of a couple of things, in my eyes anyway. They can choose to go short, so that includes the new goal kick rule of within the box. And when I was kind of going through the clips here, I kind of found that there are short goal kicks this season still which actually exit the box, and I think it kind of skews the analysis a lot if you were to call them in the kind of like out of box category. So the definition I decided on is any goal kick that's 40 meters away from the goal or within 40 meters is a short goal kick, and anything beyond that in that kind of white space there is a long goal kick. And there are kind of 3 outcomes that we have here. These are passes being complete, passes being incomplete, and possession being retained. And these are 3 key distinctions that I'll kind of show to you going forwards. So in terms of pass completion rates, we see that 98% of short goal kicks are complete. It probably comes to the fact that that first pass usually is free. More often than not, there's not a lot of kind of pressure or kind of a high block in place to prevent that first pass from being made. Whereas with long goal kicks, the pass is complete. So in Opta terms, that is, it goes from me, if I'm the goalkeeper, to a player who's on my team, goes to his feet to his head, it technically hits him, and that is therefore complete. But what we probably care for a bit more is around retaining possession retention. Possession retention, as I've defined here, essentially is you keep possession of the ball after that moment. So it could be a situation where goalkeeper kicks the ball out to the wing, and this is something that I've seen a lot of clips with Wolves that they do quite a lot. They usually go to kind of the opposite fullback to where they're taking the goal kick from. They hit the fullback at that side, who's usually challenged with the opposition winger or opposition fullback, and they'll either nod the ball inside or win a throw-in. If you win the throw-in, you've retained possession, even though the goal kick might not have been complete. So I think that's an important thing to highlight, that possession retention is actually a really useful metric to use aside from this analysis, and something that I'd expect to see more research and usage of going forwards. So now about, okay, how have these tendencies changed? Have teams gone short or long, more or less, based on this new in-box goal kick rule, and which teams have changed their strategies the most? So this we can see kind of the 2018-19 season on the side, and the 19-20 season, this season on the right-hand side. And we see that all leagues have had an increase in the share of goal kicks that go short. We have some leagues which have a fairly drastic change. Serie A is nearly kind of 2 in 3, 6 out of 10 goal kicks are now these short goal kicks. And La Liga has also risen as well, but perhaps not as steeply. So I think this is interesting for a number of reasons. No one told teams that they have to take more short goal kicks, just everyone seems to have done this. There's probably a bit of a herd effect that one team starts using it more, so we all have to do that. And being an Arsenal fan, that infamous game against Watford, which I'll probably speak about no end in this talk, shows you that sometimes short goal kicks, just because they're there, they aren't the option that you have to use. And then looking on the team side, league by league again, so we can see that Brighton actually last season with Matt Ryan and Chris Hughton compared to Matt Ryan and Graham Potter, now take the highest proportion of goal kicks which are short this season. These are the top 5 teams for each league which have seen like the greatest change in number of short goal kicks they take now. So Man United actually take a ton as well. Liverpool have seen an increase too, alongside Arsenal. As the title suggests, Genoa have had 3 managers and yet still have a consistent strategy throughout the management of taking the goal kick short. If only their approach to kind of hiring a manager was as consistent as their goal kick strategy. Then we've got Barcelona as well. So Barcelona have also take a fair chunk of their goal kick short. So again, we've seen from this rule change that more teams take short goal kicks. Okay, but what about taking and kind of conceding chances in these situations? Now you're probably thinking that goal kicks aren't a primary method of teams creating chances, and you'd definitely be correct in that. But the thing that we all stick to when we think of the new short goal kick rule is the teams that cock up playing out the back and concede from that. So I think we want to get some good figures on: do you create more shots from these situations? Do you concede more shots from these situations in the short or long goal kick categories? And so to do this, I kind of got the event data. We have our kind of sequence framework, which rolls up all the events into a chain of possession. And I just filtered down for those chains which start with a goal kick. Pretty useful for this kind of analysis. The sequence is fewer than 30 seconds long. So there's a bit of an issue here of where do you choose the cutoff between Man City playing out from the back from a short goal kick and the shot they generate is because of the short goal kick or because they're Man City. And that was kind of a bit of a trial and error element there, and you could probably do some switched on modelling to try and find what's the point at which a team changed from building out because of the goal kick and just playing the way they always play. The ball cannot go out of play, and the sequence results in a shot. And on the flip side, we want sequences that start with the goal kick. The sequence for the team that starts with the ball is fewer than 30 seconds long, and then the sequence against the ball, so essentially that transition leading to the shot against, is less than 30 seconds long again. That's because we want to capture times when teams have kind of like hit the opponent in transition and create a chance from that. And finally, we want this sequence to remain in open play. So I'm surprised no talks today have really had a quote from Johan Cruyff or Pep Guardiola, and I wanted to demonstrate what I think is really important, which is the notion of transition. So I got a quote from Chris Davies, who's the assistant manager at Leicester City. And Chris's quote was in a piece in The Independent by Miguel Delaney, and was kind of talking around how like transition or controlling transition is now the most important part of the game. You see, Liverpool work and use transition really well. All the top sides kind of now are able to turn, slight breaks in play of the opposition team into counter-attacks and attacks when played really, really quickly. So I think thinking of the idea of transition when you see these clips and see the rest of the analysis is really important. So now I've got 4 video examples of shots which have been generated from short goal kicks, shots that are against from short goal kicks, shots from a long goal kick, and shot from conceded from a long goal kick. So we'll start with Chelsea, and as you can see, that was just slightly inside the box for Kurt Zouma. And what you see here is some really nice choreographed movement where this is evidently what the commentator would say, straight from the training ground. Doesn't really matter that Mason Mount missed because they're 4-0 up. But that is what you can see when a team is well dialed and well tuned to starting a sequence of play from a goal kick. And alternatively, we've got a similar example here for Athletic Bilbao. So very similar kind of movement. They use the channels to drag players out of position, and they get upfield fairly quickly. But then the real issue here is they don't control the transition when this breaks down. And they get a really nice chance from this. It helps that you've got Inaki Williams, who is absolutely rapid, and it helps that Simon Kjær does some Roger Johnson-esque defending. And that happens as well. But you can still see that these two opportunities are fairly similar. One's broken down, and in that transition stage, they've been punished, essentially. Let's now look at kind of these long goal kick situations. So the first I want to focus on is a recent game for Spurs against Norwich. You won't see the long goal kick, because it turns out no one kind of clips the point that Gazaniga kicks it. But what I want you to focus on here in a second is Alex Tettey with Dele Alli. So that moment there is what I think is probably where Norwich could have kind of like controlled this moment and stopped what is going to happen now from happening. Great reverse ball from Lo Celso, bit of luck from Dele Alli, and Son scores. So again, that's a long goal kick. They've created some notion of chaos. If you were to kind of watch back, you've got kind of various players being dragged out of position. Here, they don't really regain shape, and then by the time it's they're running back towards their own goal, it's almost a bit too late. And for me, again, this shows you that there's probably quite a fine line between like stopping a shot from a long goal kick, and it's usually due to these kind of transitional moments. And the last one, which is my favourite clip, and Dortmund are actually a great example because I show them later on being a fairly poor side from actually taking goal kicks. So they float the ball over from Roman Berkey. Two players go for the ball, neither shouts, they both lose it, and straight away, Leipzig are, again, shock in transition. And playing that again, really focus on the two kind of like fullbacks go for the header, because it's very reminiscent of me when I was playing football at under 14s, and the coach saying, one of you, and you both jump up, knock heads, fall down. Free header for Lucas Klosterman. And from this, again, the key here is in that transitional moment. It's when Klosterman jumps up to head the ball, you've got Axel Witsel there, who's in the middle of the pitch. He's just ahead, let's see if this works. He's just ahead of Yusuf Poulsen. You've got Timo Werner, who's really quick, and you've got Sabitzer occupying these three players here. So there's no kind of like guard in place to stop this from happening. There's a lot of reliance on these two guys to make that header, because otherwise there is actually probably, if you were to look at this from a tracker data point of view and quantify this, there's probably not a very nice situation to find yourself in. So those are some examples. And what we find in these kind of grids, which I'll use for a lot more going forwards, is that kind of generating shots from long goal kicks happens kind of 1% of the time. So you have 100 sequences that start with a goal kick, you'll have one of them which results in a shot for. In terms of shots against, we've seen a mild decrease in the fact that it's 1.6% previously to 1.4%. Before anyone asks, kind of, I don't have any error bars on this, these are absolute figures. Then shots for, from short goal kicks, you've got actually a slight increase in the proportion of sequences which end in a shot, which shows you that maybe teams have got slightly better at this. Not entirely sure, like, is it because the better teams are doing this more often, teams got more adept, something like that. And then shots against from short goal kicks, bear in mind that this year is when this new rule has come in. We've actually seen less teams concede shots on average from this. Again, this is a slightly smaller sample. We have a full season of 18-19, and we have, 2/3 of 19-20, so these figures could change going forwards. But I thought this was interesting that we don't see kind of a huge shift. A lot of these are kind of relatively small changes. But volume is one thing, but obviously you can't come to a conference like this without seeing expected goals on screen at some point. And I thought this was obviously the best way of measuring the quality of these chances. So we see that between the 2 years, for shots, 4 from long shots, long goal kicks, the qualities remain fairly consistent. And the XG per shot from long goal kicks has actually dropped a fair amount. But the biggest flip side, which you'll see over here, is that the quality of chances created from short goal kicks has decreased, and the quality of the chances conceded, is increased. So maybe teams are opening themselves more up from the back. They're actually conceding slightly higher quality chances on average. Again, we're talking about fairly small samples, small numbers, but there have been kind of some changes here. Teams are creating less good quality shots from goal kicks. They're conceding high quality shots against short goal kicks. And I also wanted to quickly mention, although we care a lot about averages here, and I had a few people moaning today about, not everything's per 90. We should look at distribution of things or chop and change them in different ways. This is kind of the distribution of shots from for and against from short goal kicks and long goal kicks. And I think one thing that was interesting to kind of highlight is this tiny but interesting bump in the fact that there's a slightly higher risk of ruin from short goal kicks, that there's more chances there of high quality against. So to me that says, again, probably what we already know, that there is a bit of a risk that from short goal kicks there could be that kind of high quality chance that the side could create against you if you don't play out effectively. So overall we kind of come to this grid, some sort of cheat sheet that we have, and I'll kind of go through it in turn from what we've kind of learned so far. So when we're looking at short goal kicks for creating chances and conceding chances, relatively these are high quality and they're also relatively high frequency as well. On long goal kicks, you're not creating chances that often, so it's low quality and low frequency, but the quality chances that you concede is actually relatively high quality to the chances that you would create. Creating chances from short and long goal kicks, more likely to create a chance going out for the back, and it's of better quality, less chances, lower quality from a long goal kick. And then on the flip side, conceding chances, high quality, high frequency, and from long goal kicks, they are of high quality, but less of them. So that's kind of a bit of a roundup of what we've learned so far. But I thought this was an excellent example that was brought to my attention from Elliot Williams at RB Leipzig. And to me, he highlighted saying, some teams should really, they should think about when they're playing out from the back. And this was a great example because, as I've kind of just shown you, there's kind of a higher risk of conceding a higher quality chance of a short goal kick. So what we'll see out here is Augsburg tried to go short, then go long. They, failed in transition, and then they score. But a bit of context though, Werder Bremen are away from home. They're currently in the relegation playoff zone in the Bundesliga. It's the 82nd minute. They probably could have done with this point. If you're looking at Nils Mackay's live win probability model, there's probably a decent chance that they're kind of due for that point at that point in time. So from a kind of strategy point of view, does it really make sense for them to go short in this situation? I'd maybe argue no, but hindsight's a really wonderful thing. So to kind of close this out, I wanted to also talk about ball progression, because taking shots and conceding shots is only a very, very small amount of sequences where this happens. But usually, a lot of what goal kicks are used for is to progress the ball forwards. So what I could look to do here is use some notion of possession value or expected threat, like the great work that Corinne's done publicly. But instead, what I've looked at is how far upfield do you get in control of the ball from the goal kick. And also, if you retain possession but it goes out of play or the sequence ends due to a foul, where are you starting that next sequence from? And so from that, I've got a couple of clips just to kind of explain what I mean. So the first of these, like Johnny, a long-suffering Arsenal fan, is Shkodran Mustafi. So receives a short goal kick, pressures straight away, and he's kicked it right out of play. So in that example, I'd kind of label the progress as about 5 meters. That's the optic coordinate of the maximum point that Arsenal had possession with Mustafi. Now you could argue that he's kicking that upfield to try and get Newcastle away from their goal, but I feel that's a moot point because this is the mighty Arsenal and they're 1-0 up against the mighty Newcastle. On the flip side, we've got this example where Real Sociedad are playing out away from home against Granada. So straight away they've controlled the ball up to a further point than Arsenal have, and they actually work it really nicely here. And this eventually accumulates kind of in the shot and the ball getting further forwards. So the maximum point this sequence gets to is kind of around 94, 95 meters. So this sequence will be adjudged to being progressed that far up the field. And what we find from going left to right is that short goal kicks on average give you more progress than long goal kicks do, which to me was really interesting. And this is also for catering the fact that we have possession retention kind of baked into this. So if I'm Burnley and I kind of like send the ball long, opposition win the ball, but I pick up the second ball, we care where that kind of second ball gets up to. We could dig a bit further and say, what's the additional progression from that next sequence where you picked up the second ball from. But even at looking kind of like from that method, we get similar-ish results. So that's kind of on a global level, but then I thought it'd be interesting to look at kind of by team. So hopefully you can see on there, but this is the blue dot being where kind of on average long goal kicks get to, and the red dot being on average where short goal kicks get to in terms of progress. And the size of these bubbles relate to the proportion of goal kicks which are short. So Arsenal here actually get kind of like on average the shortest progress upfield from long goal kicks when they do go long, and also relatively short distance when they go short. Whereas Man City get inside the opposition half whenever they take a short goal kick. Which for Man City is probably due to the fact that a lot of teams don't even bother trying to press them or go up. They give them the first 30 meters is kind of free. And being able to embed tracking data into this or additional context on these events can give you a bit more information as to why teams can get up so far so quickly. Other examples are certain teams who do some strategies relatively infrequently, but they're pretty good at it. So Osasuna here actually seems to be pretty good at getting the ball upfield from short goal kicks. That could be a tiny sample and not a lot of noise in that, but still warrants kind of looking at the reasons as to why that is. And of course, you have all this linked to videos, linked to all the sequences, so trying to find kind of those choreographed moves that teams do is kind of really easy to do with data because it's all backed by video. So some takeaways. There's a high risk reward trade-off when it comes to short goal kicks. You can create chances, but you can also concede chances at probably rates that you didn't know of before. Short goal kicks actually offer a better means of building up though and progressing the ball further upfield. And this is kind of reflected in the ball progression numbers that we've seen. So again, if you come back to that kind of like 4-quadrant axes, short goal kicks are somewhat risky, but offer you a better route to ball progression. Long goal kicks, less risky, less ball progression. If you're Werder Bremen at the weekend, the 82nd minute, maybe go for a long goal kick. And then also something I keep mentioning a lot is that the transition moments here are key. So the way you can exploit short and long goal kicks is understanding how you can exploit and control that transitional moment. And of course, like I said, these are all contingent on the game state. And some free ideas. How does pressure on the ball impact a team's ability to progress it upfield? From watching a bunch of kind of Arsenal goal kicks in these situations, they don't seem to be amazing in playing out under pressure. So maybe that should, maybe you should just like accept that fact or adjust your strategy as such. Can we identify common routes from goal kicks, which is something the work of kind of Danny and Joe at Stats Forum have done with their kind of like movement chains and looking at what the common movements are teams from, or what the common movements of teams are from different situations. And something which I didn't really touch on, but you might have seen in a few clips, is that some teams kind of go short to then go long, or they go short and they stay short and they keep passes short throughout. Being able to do something kind of like Vignesh has done, either from a rules-based approach or something similar, to codify these, give these a name and compare those strategies, I think would be really useful and interesting. But yeah, thanks for listening. Happy to take any questions.